Welcome to the First Ward. This is my home. I do in fact live here. Some people say that's crazy. How can you live here with all the things that happen there? And isn't it scary and all that kind of stuff? I just want to start it off by saying, for me, the reality is it's just like having roommates, but better because they don't eat my food. The school here, she was built in 1896, which makes her the oldest surviving school building in Wisconsin Rapids. When they built this school, they built it with the idea in mind that it was going to have all of the latest and greatest that technology had to offer. So if you find the newspaper article about the opening of the school, it talks about how it had all the things like electricity, indoor plumbing, it had coal furnaces for heat in the wintertime, and there was a whole paragraph just talking about the blinds because of now how teachers possess the ability to adjust sunlight out of the students' eyes. That's pretty high-tech stuff back then. This was also the first school in Rapids to have electricity and indoor plumbing. The gold frames like that one right there and the two you saw coming in, those are actually pieces of the original blueprints. It's back before they had computers or anything, so they were all hand-drawn and stuff way back in the day. The picture above the doorway, that's what she looked like when they finished building her. That's when she still had the bell tower. The bell tower was lost in 1920. It was lost in a fire. What had happened was, it was a really cold winter day. It was January 20th, 1920. The caretaker had both coal furnaces up and running. And fortunately, he decided to walk home and have lunch that day. He used to live right down the street here, right out of Irving Street, which is a street right outside the school. So he lived just blocks away. And he happened to notice when he was walking home that the roof of the school was on fire. Apparently what had happened is embers had escaped up out of the chimney from the coal furnace and landed on the roof and set the roof on fire. That's when the bell tower was lost. The big dome that's in the backyard, a lot of people seem to think that that's the original dome of the bell tower. It is not. That was the previous owner who bought this place with the idea in mind that he was going to build this bed and breakfast, and he was going to have a tower going out the top of the school where people could go up there and oversee the town. The school was built on the highest point in town, so had he completed the tower, that would have been the tallest legal standing point in the town. Now, as far as like paranormal activity in this area, one of the most common things that people will report in this area is they see shadow people that go back and forth through here. Now, my honest opinion, that's what we call a residual type kind of haunt, because originally the school had back doors to match the front doors. So this was a high traffic area. And what a residual type kind of haunt is almost just like a moment in time that just plays itself out over and over again. There's no intelligence to it. It's not going to react to you in any way, shape, form, or fashion. What usually causes that kind of activity are areas where things happen at the same times of day, which you would have had the kids entering and leaving classrooms in the building at the same times of day, or areas that are attached to high emotion, which what's more emotional than children. So I think with all that combined is creating that residual type kind of energy to pass through here. Now, as far as more of like kind of intelligent kind of activity, I think my favorite thing I've ever had happen would be going back to the first Christmas that I was here. I moved into the building. My first Christmas, I got 12-foot ceilings. I was excited. I was like, I'm getting a big Christmas tree, right? You know. So I had this big Christmas tree in here. I had it set up right over here. And as I started decorating the tree, I started to hear the laughter and giggling of children. And that's when it kind of dawned on me. It's like, well, the school closed in 1977. So if there were still any kids here, they hadn't seen and or heard anything Christmas 40 going on 50 years. Now, in my honest opinion, when it comes to ghosts, all a ghost is a human soul. It's not a monster. It's not out to get you. If you want to get into ghosts and ghost hunting, the first thing you need to do is take all the Hollywood and just get rid of it. Get rid of the shit you see on, the stuff you see on TV, so the stuff you see in horror movies, the campfire stories, all that kind of stuff. Get rid of it. Because at the end of the day, all a ghost is a human soul. So like with the kids, I make them a part of the family. So what we would do is we would have like a boy's stocking and a girl's stocking on Christmas. So they would get their own new toys just like everybody else does on the holidays. Same thing with like Easter, get a basket for them so they get stuff too, just make them a part of everything. Going into the kindergarten room, now we've had a lot of people come here for tours who used to go to school here. They want to come back and see what's being done with the building, things like that. And one of the great things about that is they get to share stories with us of what it was like to go to school here. One of the most common stories that we would hear from people would be about the kindergarten teacher and how she used to discipline the students. One thing that she used to do is she used to keep a roll of tape in her desk. And if you got too mouthy, she would actually rip 2 pieces of tape off that roll and put an X right over the kid's mouth.
Wow.
If you extra pissed her off, she would lock you in that closet back there. Which is really, really interesting because I did a tour with this young lady. She lives a couple of blocks from the school. She's really into the ghost hunting shows. So she brought a voice recorder with her during the tour, hoping to capture EVPs. Well, she came back to the school about 2 days after getting the tour with her voice recorder, and she's like, "You got to hear this." She hits play on the voice recorder. It's the part of the tour where I'm telling her how the teacher used to lock students in the closet over here, and all of a sudden, over the recording, you hear this little boy's voice say, "I didn't do it." Now, what's really, really interesting is a month after that EVP was captured, a team came here for an investigation. They brought a psychic along with them, which some psychics are BS, but there's some out there that are legit. This psychic, they just shown up. They hadn't had a tour or anything. They were just bringing in their bags and stuff. The team psychic, when she walked into the kindergarten room, the first thing she did is she walked over and opened that door. She said she didn't know why, but that door had to remain open. When she opened the door, she claimed she could see a little boy sitting on the floor who kept telling her over and over again, "I didn't do it. I didn't do it." I think, though, my absolute favorite story in the kindergarten room was with a buddy of mine. His name is Brian Dorn. He's into the paranormal. He writes books on the paranormal. He's a little bit more on the skeptical side. You would love him, Joe.
Yeah.
He was getting ready to write a new book, so he called me up and asked if he could come up here and do an investigation with me. So I agreed to it, and he came out, and me and him had been investigating till probably about 1:30 in the morning, and we hadn't had anything happen. It was so quiet in here, you probably could have heard a mouse fart. So what we did is we just went out to that landing out there, sat in those chairs, and did nothing but listen. Well, after listening for a while, we started to hear knocks inside the kindergarten room. And Brian looked at me and he's like, "Did you just hear that?" And I said, "I sure did." He's like, "Well, let's go in there." Brian comes into the kindergarten room, and this is what he did. He goes, "If there's anybody in here and you want to go outside and play, just knock on something and let me know." And all of a sudden, we heard more knocks in the room. Brian looks at me, he's like, "Did you just hear it again?" And I was like, "I sure did." He goes, "Okay, well, if there's somebody locked in the closet back there and you want to go outside and play too, that's fine. Nobody's going to get left behind. Everybody has the chance to go. All you have to do is knock on the door and we'll let you out." And all of a sudden we heard knock, knock on the door. So I walked over there, I opened up the door, I went back, I was standing next to the board over here behind you guys. Brian's standing right next to me, and Brian goes, "Okay, if everybody's ready to go outside now, what I need everybody to do is to line up against the wall over here." And then we heard the sound of footsteps going across the floor right over to that wall. And then Brian goes, "Okay, last thing. I talked to the teacher, I talked to the principal. You guys are not going to get in trouble for this. But if everybody's ready to go outside now, what I need you to do is to turn around and knock on the wall behind you as hard as you can." And then we heard knock, 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 right down the wall. Brian being the gentleman that he is, he actually acted like he was getting the kids together single file up to the door. He actually went outside like he was outside with the kids for a while, called them all back to the front door again, you know, calling them back inside, went through the whole process. And one of the reasons why I love that story so much was A, he talked to them like they were real people. He talked to them in a way that would engage them in a way they would want to respond to him. The other thing that I loved about it was he didn't use any equipment. I'm not against equipment. I do use some equipment myself. The biggest problem that I see, especially with a lot of new investigators, they come in with the latest and greatest toy, whatever the hell it is, they set it down, they spend the whole night staring at this thing, waiting for it to bleep, bloop, blop, whatever the hell it's supposed to do, and they're not paying attention to a goddamn thing that's going on around them. That ghost could literally be behind that guy doing a jig, and they would never know. The last thing that I really love about that story is he followed through with what he promised. I've seen too many teams, they'll come in, they'll say, hey, if you do this for us, we'll do this for you. This happens, and everybody loses their mind. They're like, oh my God, did you see that? That was amazing. I gotta go outside, I gotta have a cigarette, I gotta call the wife. And then they never followed through with what they promised. And how rude is that? The truth of it is, when somebody comes up to you like, do you believe in ghosts? You just gotta look at them and say, do you believe in the human soul? Because that's what a ghost is. You can give it a different label if you want to. If that helps you sleep better at night. But at the end of the day, it's a human soul. And when you have a paranormal experience, instead of being scared or, dude, run, change the way you think. What is actually happening is you are seeing evidence of the eternal human soul. So what does that mean? That means that you have a soul. Maybe you should start living your life like you have one. That's why I don't call it ghost hunting. I don't call it paranormal investigating. I call it soul searching. There's also cool pieces in the building. All the furniture and everything in the building is all stuff that's been brought here. There was nothing left in the building other than garbage. All the desks, everything had been removed. So this is all stuff that we've brought here. Now we've tried to find cool items along the way. Like these pieces here were all owned by the mobster Frankie One-Ear Frotto. He had these pieces were especially made for his mansion in Chicago. He was good friends like the Rat Pack, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., people like that. So there was a lot cooler butts sitting on these sofas than mine will ever be. His best friend in the whole world was Sammy Davis Jr. They spent a lot of time together. There's Sammy and Frankie right
That's
there.
him, huh?
And they were such good friends that they even posed for candid shots like that.
Whoa. Is that?
That's Sammy Davis.
That's a, yeah.
And Frankie together.
Wow.
These are actually 2 letters that Sammy Davis wrote Frankie.
What?
This area over here would have been the other entranceway, the south entrance, which would also have been known as the boys' entrance. Because back in the day, they kept the boys segregated from the girls when they entered and left the building. So the other side would have been the girls' side. This would have been the boys'. So originally, there would have been a back door here instead of the boys' restroom like it is now. The boys' restroom.
Yep, I knew it. Just to let you guys know, I was here many years ago, and I came around this corner and just about peed my pants because of that right there. That's a little doll that Justin decided to put right there.
Once again, one of the most common things that people report in here is like when they're sitting in the stalls, they say they can see underneath the stalls like the shadows of people walking by. Once again, I just think that's all part of that residual energy that we talked about out there, just progressing its way right out to here, which would have originally been a back door, not a window like it is now. It's finally snowing.
Well, gotta have a little bit of nudity. Is it really snowing?
Yes, it's really finally snowing.
Look at that, folks.
The most common thing that would happen in the girls' restroom is you'll hear these stall doors doing this a lot throughout the day. There's no breezes going through here. Definitely nothing breeze-wise coming through here strong enough that can make the doors do that. Most teams that have been here have been able to experience that. But this room is special to the family. This is the first room that anybody from my family saw an apparition in the building. So it would have been after we'd gotten the garbage out. My mom and my aunt were out on that landing right there. They were sweeping and mopping the floor out there. My mom was standing about where that table and lamp is now. She looks into the girls' room, and she claims she saw a little girl standing in front of this sink. Looked like she was crying and looking into the mirror, even though there was no mirror there at the time. She turned and looked at my mother and disappeared. At that point, my mom turned around to tell my aunt what she'd just seen, and my aunt was standing behind my mom like, because she'd seen the exact same thing my mother saw. Now, this room here is generally the least active room. Out of all the rooms in the building, this is where the least amount of activity happens. But that being said, that doesn't mean things don't happen in here. A lot of people like dog walkers, joggers, or Judy who lives across the street here, they'll tell us how sometimes they see an older gentleman looking out the window, or sometimes they see a little girl, or sometimes they love to tell me how they like my little black cat that sits up in the windows. I don't have a black cat. This bed is what they call a rope bed. It's about 200 years old. It was only owned by one family. The family's home burnt down, but the bed didn't burn. Everything in the house burnt, even the mattress and blankets and everything that was on the bed burnt, but the bed did not burn. That dresser right there, that was owned by H.H. Holmes. If you're not familiar with who H.H. Holmes was, he was considered the country's first serial killer. He had a hotel just outside of Chicago. It was later dubbed the Murder Castle. The guy was a crazy genius. He had the hotel built with all kinds of secret passageways and doorways and things into it. So he could actually come into the room, kill you, open up this trap door, drop the body into it, the body go all the way down to the basement, and none of the guests were any the wiser. And how he had pulled off having the place built like that was he actually hired a team of people to come in, build one section of the hotel, he'd fire them, bring in a new team to build the next part, fire them, and just rinse and repeat. So nobody had any full idea of what it was they were building or what its purposes and things were. But once it was found out what he was doing, the hotel mysteriously burned down. I think it was locals probably took it down once they found out the horrible things that happened in it. But this dresser survived all that. Reason being, this was one of the pieces of evidence used against Holmes in his murder trial. Well, if you look at this dresser here, see the three very, very ornate drawers?
Yep.
So what you don't see is the faceplate on the bottom of the dresser is actually a secret drawer where he kept the knives and stuff that he used to torture his murder weapons. Right, that's where he kept them. Now, the funny part about the story, there is a funny part. Now, what often happens is after cases, the evidence is auctioned off if it's not claimed or whatever like that. One of the officers acquired this dresser and gave it to his wife as an anniversary present. Going into the red room, this room here is probably, it's in tie with another room in the building as being one of the most active rooms. The event that you were here for, Joe, and Ben Hansen was here from Sci-Fi's Fact or Faked. When he was in this room, he kept a voice recorder running. And he actually heard the voice of an older gentleman say something to him. And his voice recorder actually picked it up. So that was kind of an interesting kind of little thing to have happen. But this room here is important to me because this was the first room I ever saw an apparition in the building. It was about 5 in the morning. I had woken up for whatever reason. I couldn't get back to sleep, which is really weird for me because I like to sleep till noon. So my girlfriend was staying with me, and she was sleeping in the office with me. So I got up, decided to get to work. So I shut the door to the office. I shut this door too because I was trying to keep the noise down because I didn't want to wake her up. I started on that window down there, and I got to like this window right here, when I noticed out of the corner of my eye, I saw something going down the length of the classroom here. So I turned to get a good solid look at it, and when I turned around, what I saw was a little girl. And when I mean little girl because she wasn't much taller than the doorknob. She was standing in front of the door. She turned, looked right at me, reached up, grabbed the doorknob, opened the door physically opened, and she walked out of the room. With Frankie Frado's table, he had this specially made just for him, so it's one of a kind. There's also these two beds over here. These are, if you're not familiar with, the Lemp family. These beds were owned by the Lemp family. The Lemps were a big producer of alcohol way back in the day. It's how the family had made their fortune. At the time that they passed prohibition and made alcohol illegal, the family committed suicide. Single gunshot wounds to the head. They even went as far as shooting the family dog. Now their mansion is known for its hauntings. Now, the one question a lot of people like to ask me, with bringing all this old stuff into the building, have you ever brought anything in with it? Yeah. Well, generally I would say no, except for this bed right here. This bed, for whatever reason, a lot of people get messed with. There's a shadow person that's seen around the bed quite often. People who sleep in the bed have different experiences. People report the bottom of their feet being slapped, people being tickled, pushed. Sometimes they say they feel somebody like pushing on the mattress underneath the bed, things like that. The attic. This was pretty much just storage space for the school, so it wasn't really too much of a functioning part of the building. One of the cool things, though, about the building. Are you guys familiar with the Freemasons?
A little bit, yep.
A little bit. Okay, like the movie National Treasure,
yep.
Cage and all that. The Freemasons were rumored to have built a lot of the first schools in this country. One thing that Freemasons do is they use limestone foundations, which, if you're into the paranormal, one of the theories out there is that buildings with limestone foundations seem to have more activity. Which the school does have a limestone foundation. Other thing is when Freemasons build a building, they find a way to build their symbology into the structure somehow. If you notice these supports here in the attic, you will notice they're actually the square and compass symbol of the Freemason. Yep. Main symbol. If you were to Google Freemasons right now, it's one of the first things that would pop up. Now, I had speculated for a long time that the Freemasons had built this school. And it was about 3 years ago, I received a letter from the Freemasons. The Freemason seal and everything on it. It's pretty freaking cool. And they requested that they wanted to come out here and talk to me. So I let them. They had two guys out here. An older guy, probably a guy closer to me and Joe's age and everything. And they were talking to me about the building. They did verify the fact that they did build this building. And they told me some pretty far out bizarre things. So you can take it or leave it. I'm not saying that this is the truth. I'm just saying this is just what was told to me. First of all, the supports themselves are extremely unique. When you normally build a building, all of your support is from the ground up. That's not the case with these supports here. They work like a suspension bridge. They're actually holding the floors up from the top down like this. We have architects come in here and see this. It blows their minds. This is 1800s. They didn't have power tools. They didn't have big, heavy construction equipment or anything. It was all by hand. Look at all these angles in the roofs and stuff. Even with the tools we have today, cutting all these angles and getting them all to butt up right and everything is a pain in the butt. So this was some skill going on up here, you know. The school was built on the highest point in town. They said that was deliberate. It's like a focal point, kind of like the top of a pyramid type kind of a situation, okay? Now the other thing that they explained to me was the supports themselves. With a normal building, if you have all of your support going from the ground up, Any energy that your building is taking from the earth is just being shot right up your roof and just out into nothingness. With a support structure like this, any energy the building is pulling up out of the earth is being recycled back down into the building again. If you want to get into the 1980s poltergeist movie scenario, that water tower that you can kind of see out of the window over there in the corner, that was where the town's first cemetery was until 1944. In 1944, the cemetery became overcrowded, so they packed it up and moved it over to the other side of town where it still exists today. When you read the reports on that, the guy in charge of the project estimated that they removed about 85% of the occupants, meaning that there's still 15% of that cemetery over there and unaccounted for.
Moved the cemetery, but you left the bodies, didn't you?
If you do your own research on the school, one of the most common stories, one of the biggest local legends of the school revolves around a story about a boy named Oscar. Now, the story goes that Oscar was a boy with mental disabilities. Now, that actually kind of fits into the history of the school because during the World War, this was actually one of the first schools in the country to start offering classes geared toward children with disabilities. So it fits with the history. The story goes on to say that Oscar was being bullied by some of the boys that went to school here. Now, the story has two different endings, depending on who you listen to. One version of the story says as Oscar became very depressed, and one day he snuck his way up here to the attic and hung himself. The other version of the story says it was the boys that were bullying him, they drug him up here, were doing stupid kid crap, and they accidentally killed Oscar. Now, even though that is the biggest story that runs around about the school, there is no documentation to support that story. So it has to remain a local legend. In the cafeteria, which this would have been the cafeteria / gymnasium, because on bad weather days, kind of like today, after lunch they would break down the tables and push the tables and chairs off to one side, let the kids come in, rock out, that kind of thing, blow off some steam. The most common things that happen in the cafeteria is you'll hear footsteps, but whoever it is does not pick up their feet. So it's more of a shuffle kind of footstep. And a lot of the times when you hear the footsteps, it's accompanied by whistling. So it sounds like somebody's walking around whistling while they work type kind of thing. Another thing, people, and this does happen in the whole building, but it's primarily the basement. A lot of people claim to have like little pebbles and things thrown at them, which I had been here for probably about a year or so before I finally experienced that for myself, because up until then I'm just like, yeah, what were you doing before you came, right? So I'm sitting in here, this is my movie room. The night I finished getting this all set up and I had the screen on, the projector and everything all set up and running, I'm an uber geek, so I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm going to watch a movie. First movie I'm going to watch in the school, Ghostbusters, okay? So I'm in here and I'm watching Ghostbusters. I'm sitting in that purple chair right there, and I'm watching Ghostbusters. It's getting towards the end. Stay Puft Marshmallow Man's walking down the street. And I'm like a little kid, like, yeah! And I'm sitting in here, and all of a sudden this little pebble hits my head. And I'm like, what the hell was that? Me being a ghost hunter, the first thing I was going to say was try to eliminate the possibilities, right? So I'm like looking at the ceiling. Maybe a piece of the ceiling had come down, hit me in the head, that kind of thing. So I'm standing up, I'm looking around at the ceiling and stuff. When it comes in, pebble number 2. And it came from that direction, and I know it came from that direction because when it hit the floor, I could hear it bouncing off the metal legs of the chairs as it came in at me. If any of you caught the episode on A&E of My Ghost Story, they showed a picture of a shadow person, and that picture was taken right over here. I'll pull it up for you. What had happened is my mother was about right where these speakers are right now. I was somewhere in this area over here when my mom claimed that she could feel somebody touching her shoulder. So she asked me, she's like, do you have your phone on you? And I said, yes. She said, quick, take a picture. So I took a picture, and this is what came out in the photograph. Now,
see it with my eyes, see it with my camera. That's cool.
Now, the naysayers, non-believers, the first way they'll try to debunk this picture is they'll say, it had to be somebody standing in the way of the camera flash creating a shadow.
Yeah.
Well, this was taken 8 years ago on my iPhone 3. If you're not familiar with the iPhone 3, they didn't have camera flashes or lights on them yet. So then people will say, okay, well then it's somebody in the room blocking out light in the room creating a shadow. Well, can you tell me which direction shadows cast in this room? Definitely not that way. They cast this way. Had it been a shadow created by a living person like so many people want to say it is, then the question to me is, if this was a shadow created by a living person, how come you see the shadow here? If this was a shadow being cast by somebody, you would see the shadow here on the wall, but you wouldn't see it here because it would just disappear down the hallway. So, riddle me that. How do you do that, you know? So that was pretty interesting. That was definitely probably one of the weirdest pictures taken here.
Oh, fireball.
This whole side of the basement was the old caretaker's. This is where all of his tools would have been on this side of the basement, his workbenches, the furnaces, the coal room. Everything he needed to run this place was on this side of the basement. His name was Mike Ickner. Mike is still here. Mike is what I would lovingly call, the crabby old man. He does swear a lot. So if you hear swearing or you capture EVPs of swearing, I apologize. That's just Mike. A lot of women that come to the school, they get messed with on this side of the basement. That's just heat expansion from that pipe.
Oh. It's the second time I've heard that and been kind of...
So a lot of women get messed with when they come in on this side of the basement. Now, there's so many people out there that want to quickly jump that, oh my God, you know, he must be a demon. He swears and he messes with women. Oh my God. This hallway here. You notice the pencil mark right here on the wall underneath this air duct.
Yeah.
You remember this spot for where we're going next. When we were finally buying the school, and we were doing the last walk through the building with the real estate agent. Her name's Mary. Still friends with her today. Great lady. I was up ahead in the room up there. Mary was coming through this area. She had her clipboard to her chest just like this. She was kind of doing one of these numbers, kind of walking through here. When I see her get to this spot, I just saw her kind of like fly up into the wall. My first thought was there was so much crap in the building, she tripped on something and fell into the wall. So I was just like, Mary, are you okay? And she yelled out, no, I'm not okay. Somebody just pushed me. And to this day, she claims that she was pushed up against this wall. And whenever she comes over for a visit, she will not come down to the basement. One of our favorite rooms.
Now the room right here.
The coal room. First thing I will say about the coal room is if Vicky does show up with her EMF detectors and stuff, I can't guarantee what the EMF is going to be like in here. EMF is all over the place. Some nights the EMF is so high, you can't even use your meter because they're just going to be maxed out. And that's it. They're not going to do anything else. Sometimes you come in here, it's dead. There isn't an ounce of EMF in here. Sometimes it comes in like waves. You can watch people's meters spike and then drop. And then spike and then drop. So I have no idea what it's going to be like in here. One theory that I have for why the EMF is generally higher in this room is because it was the coal room. That is coal dust. Coal is carbon. Carbon's a conductor. Do the math. So I think that could be part of it. My mother came into the coal room. She said she noticed candy wrappers on the floor that the nice people had left us. So she was in here, she said she bent over, she was picking up the candy wrappers. She said when she stood back up, she felt 2 hands slam into her chest and pushed and held her up against the wall right here for about 5 seconds.
Right on the other side of the vent.
She said to her, it felt more like 5 minutes, but in reality it was probably just a few seconds. And that's when she came out of here running. She found us, and we're like, what happened, you know? Us being the crazy ghost hunting family that we are, we're like, great, it's Halloween night. Mom just got messed with in the basement. We're going down there, right? So we come in here. I'm in this room with my mom and my aunt and my cousin Paige. My mom and my aunt are sitting in that corner over there, and I'm sitting on the floor over here next to my cousin Paige. We had 3 EMF detectors in the room. One was in the doorway, one was in the middle of the room, and one was in that corner with my mom and my aunt. We investigated for about a half an hour. Didn't have anything happen. When all of a sudden, one right after another, the meters came on, almost like somebody had ran into the room and went right for that corner. So it was like a bloop. Right after that, we hear this loud, deep male voice go, fudge, for the YouTube viewers. At that point, you know, like my aunt is jumping into my mom's lap. My cousin Paige was strangling me. I was the only guy here. I didn't say it. It was definitely a deep male voice that said it. So I was like, okay, where did the real estate agent get pushed? Right there, other side of that wall. And where did Mom get pushed? Right there, same wall, almost exact same spot, just opposite side. Now, I had mentioned Tiffany Johnson earlier in the tour. After we bought the school, she came out here, did a walk through the building, and just gave us what her general impressions were. One of the things she said when she came into the coal room, she claims that there is a portal in this room, and it's where all the spirits in the school come and go from, and that's why this room has so much activity. Only thing I will say about that, in my 30-plus years of investigating, I don't know that I have ever seen enough evidence that supports the theory of portals or vortexes or any of that kind of stuff. This room here, this is where Mike's workbenches would have been originally. They were up against the wall over there. Since I put in those little makeshift tables and stuff, it has made him a little bit happier. I can pretty much sum up this room with one story. Good buddy of mine named Joe Kudo does a little show you might know called The Skeptical Edge. He's a little bit more on the non-believer side. And Joe came out here. He's doing an investigation. And it started this way. When I was giving him the tour that time, we came through those doors right there. And we thought we saw a shadow person right there, then shoot down that hallway down to the dining room. Now, Joe, being the sound-minded guy that he is, had himself talked out of it in no time flat. He was just like, oh, it just must be my eyes getting adjusted to the dark down here, you know, trick of light, that kind of thing. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm not going to tell you what you saw or didn't see. And that's one thing that I will mention about my buddy Joe. We can have differences of opinion, but we can still talk and be social. Imagine that in this day and age, having a difference of opinion with somebody and still being friends. Isn't that amazing? But anyways, later that night, we all came down here and we were investigating. We were asking for knocks. We started getting knocks and we were asking for them, including the number of knocks we were asking for. You know, I got all the way up to like, hey, Mike, would you give us 3 knocks? We get 3 knocks. Joe, being the skeptical kind of guy that he is, he was naming the logical things. He's thinking, well, you know, it could be the building settling or noise traveling through the air ducts. I'm like, okay, let's take a break. Took a break, we went outside, had a couple of cigarettes, and we came back down here. At this point, I'm sitting here, the Gurneys were sitting across from me, and Joe was sitting in that corner over there. And I just started talking, you know, thanks for talking to us earlier. We really appreciated it. You know, we took a little break, but we're back now. And at that point, we hear like this deep male voice. I know I heard that over there.
Okay, all right. It's almost like a shuffling or something. I heard
that.
Okay, yeah.
That wasn't just you on that one. At that point, when I say, hey, we took a break, we're back now, hear this deep male voice, you know, said, hello. Honest to God. At first, I just thought it was Joe. because he kind of has that deep radio announcer kind of voice, you know. So I was just like, that's what I thought, you know, hey, we took a break, we're back now. I thought it was just Joe saying hello. So I just kept going. The two ladies sitting across from me are like, didn't you hear that? And I just went, Joe, that wasn't you? And you just hear Joe from the corner over there like, oh, mother. Because me and him are the only two guys in the group, and neither one of us said it. And it was definitely a male voice that said hello, and the voice recorders picked it up. But I do have to tell you, I don't have anything set up here, or speakers or anything like that. I have investigators that climb all over this building. I wouldn't risk that, because the minute something was found, my reputation would be over. The other thing, you know, especially like people who live in town and want to say that I'm running a money-making scheme here. First of all, you don't know how much it costs to fix an old building like this, let alone how much it costs to run an old building like this.
Last time I was here, didn't I climb into something?
I think you did, but I'm not sure what it was. It might have been the little storage area over there, or that one over there.
I don't remember. I thought there was something over here.
Yeah, there is.
Is it behind this board here?
Yep, behind that.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. I climbed in there and sat in there for like a half hour or so by myself. Yeah, that wasn't smart.